It's one of the quiet truths nobody wants to say out loud. Many modern women don't fall in love with men they admire. They fall in love with men they can control. Not because control feels romantic, but because control feels safe. See, strength in a man creates uncertainty. It demands trust. It forces surrender. And surrender, for a woman conditioned by modern culture to never depend on anyone, feels like danger. So instead, she seeks comfort, predictability. A man who won't challenge her opinions, won't set boundaries, won't risk rejection by saying no. He doesn't lead, he follows. He doesn't direct, he agrees. He doesn't hold his ground. He apologizes for standing on it. And at first, it feels perfect. He's soft, understanding, safe. He never argues. He validates everything. But slowly, something inside her begins to shift, because the very comfort that once soothed her begins to suffocate her, and she doesn't know why. She'll say, he's too nice, or too available. But what she really means is that he's too easy to control. Because when a woman feels too much control in a relationship, she loses polarity. There's no tension, no mystery, no gravity pulling her toward him. She knows exactly where he'll be, what he'll say, how he'll react. And certainty kills desire. What she thought was emotional safety was really just emotional boredom. See, a weak man mistakes compliance for connection. He thinks if he avoids conflict, he'll earn affection. If he sacrifices his boundaries, he'll prove his loyalty. If he gives her everything she wants, she'll never leave. But that's not how attraction works. Love doesn't grow in comfort. It grows in contrast, in polarity, in the dance between power and surrender, the balance between his direction and her emotion. When he gives up his direction to make her feel safe, he unknowingly takes away the very thing that made her attracted to him in the first place, his strength. And deep down, she feels it. She won't say it out loud, but she senses the imbalance. She's leading, and it drains her. She's controlling, but she feels less feminine. She's getting what she thought she wanted, yet somehow it doesn't feel right. Because the truth is simple. Control is not love. Control is fear dressed as security. She doesn't want a man she can control, she wants a man she can trust, but trust requires letting go, and letting go requires strength. So while she may love a weak man for the comfort he provides, she can never desire him for the same reason. Because a man who always bends to keep her happy will never make her feel safe enough to fall. There was a time when attraction was simple. Men led, women followed. Not out of dominance or submission, but because there was polarity, a natural current of energy pulling them together. Masculine direction met feminine emotion, and from that friction came connection. It wasn't about control, it was about balance. But in the modern world, that current has been reversed. Men are told that leadership is toxic, that boundaries are oppressive, that calm confidence is arrogance. And slowly, the masculine loses its center, trading direction for deference, strength for softness, purpose for approval. And women? They've been taught that independence is survival, that control is safety, that vulnerability is weakness. So now we have relationships built on imitation, not polarity. Men acting soft to avoid rejection, women acting hard to avoid pain. Both wearing masks, neither feeling alive. Because polarity doesn't exist where roles are reversed. Attraction dies when both energies collapse into sameness. When a man stops leading, a woman stops feeling. Not because she wants to dominate, but because she loses the emotional gravity that made her trust him. She starts to take over, not out of choice, but out of necessity. She plans, decides, initiates, and with every act of control, her desire quietly erodes. He becomes safe, but invisible, comfortable, but forgettable. She might still love him, but she no longer feels him. And that's the tragedy of modern love. We've confused equality with sameness, balance with blandness. Men were never supposed to compete with women emotionally, They were meant to complement them energetically. Because when masculine direction disappears, the feminine becomes anxious. She doesn't feel anchored. She doesn't feel held. And she mistakes that anxiety for falling out of love, when really she's falling out of polarity. A strong man doesn't control her. He creates space for her emotion without drowning in it. He gives her structure, not restriction. Presence, not pressure. And that's what keeps attraction alive. His steadiness, her surrender. But when he gives up that steadiness to please her, she loses what made her feel feminine in the first place. She becomes masculine to fill the void he left. And two masculine energies don't dance. They clash. So she says she wants a man who listens, who shares, who feels. But when she finally gets him, she feels nothing. Because love without polarity is just friendship with expectations. This is the death of attraction in the modern age. Not because men are too soft or women too strong, but because both are afraid to embody who they truly are. She doesn't want to lead. She just wants to trust that he can. And until men remember that, love will keep feeling safe, but never electric. Weak men don't realize how much power they give away, not through surrender, but through seeking. They crave validation the way a starving man craves food. Every compliment, every thank you, every moment of approval becomes oxygen. And because of that, they start living on someone else's breath. They tell themselves they're being caring, thoughtful, romantic. But in reality, they're addicted. Not to love, but to response. Their entire sense of worth depends on how warmly she reacts. If she's happy, he's fulfilled. If she's cold, he collapses. And women feel it instantly. They can sense when a man's confidence isn't real, when it's borrowed from their approval. At first, it flatters them. They think, he really listens. He really cares. But over time, it becomes heavy, because no woman wants to be the source of a man's self-worth. She wants to share energy with him, not sustain him. That's the trap of the validation exchange. He gives more, hoping to be loved more, while she takes more, hoping to feel something. Both end up empty. He becomes her emotional mirror, reflecting her moods, her needs, her insecurities, until there's nothing of him left. And the moment she senses he's willing to trade his dignity for her approval, the attraction dies. Because a man who needs to be validated can never be trusted. He'll agree when he should confront. He'll apologize when he should lead. He'll compromise not to keep peace, but to keep access. And that kind of peace is fragile. When a man gives up his frame for comfort, he doesn't create safety. He creates dependency. He becomes the emotional pet, the constant reassurance machine, feeding her self-doubt while starving his own soul. That's why so many modern relationships collapse under the weight of need, because both people are addicted to validation. She needs attention to feel loved. He needs approval to feel worthy, and neither has anything real to give, just emotional echoes of each other's emptiness. The strong man doesn't reject validation. He just doesn't rely on it. He gives freely, but from fullness, not fear. He listens, but he doesn't lose himself. He loves, but never begs. Because he understands something the weak man never learned. Attention isn't affection. Affection isn't approval. And love isn't earned by overextending. He gives because he chooses to, not because he needs to. And that choice, that grounded, centered energy, is what separates devotion from desperation. Modern women might be drawn to the weak man at first, but they only respect the one who doesn't seek validation at all. Because the moment a man stops needing to be chosen, he becomes the one who finally chooses himself. Every relationship has an invisible currency, and that currency is respect. Once it's gone, love can't survive. And here's the brutal truth. A woman can love a man she doesn't respect, but she'll never desire him. She'll care about him, defend him, even stay with him. But the spark, the pull, dies quietly. It doesn't happen in one argument or one mistake. It happens in 1,000 small moments where he chose comfort over conviction, where he said yes when he meant no, where he smiled through disrespect to avoid conflict, where he confused being agreeable with being kind. At first, she might appreciate his softness. He feels safe, predictable, but slowly, that safety turns into something else. Irritation. Because the same man who once made her feel understood now makes her feel unled. She starts to test him, not consciously, but instinctively. A woman's nature always searches for structure, for boundaries, for presence. And when she doesn't feel them, she pushes harder. Not because she wants to destroy him, but because she wants to feel him. But he doesn't push back. He laughs it off. He says it's not a big deal. He believes peace is found in avoiding resistance, when in truth peace is built through earned respect. Every time he lets a line be crossed, a small piece of her trust dies. Every time he prioritizes her comfort over his principles, a small piece of her attraction fades. Until one day she looks at him and feels nothing. Not anger, not hatred, just indifference. The death of polarity, the death of respect, the death of desire, all disguised as peace. He'll notice it in subtle ways. The way her tone shifts. The way her body leans away instead of in. The way her compliments turn into pity. She's still there, but her heart has already left. And here's what makes it worse. She won't even blame him. She'll blame herself. Because deep down she knows she helped create the very weakness she now resents. She softened him, then lost interest in the softness. That's the cruel paradox of comfort. It feels safe while it's killing the fire. A woman can forgive a man for being flawed, but not for being forgettable. Because when she stops feeling his strength, she stops feeling her own softness. When he loses his edge, she loses her trust. And when respect collapses, love follows right behind it. He thought being gentle would keep her close. He thought being agreeable would make her stay. But what she needed wasn't a man who'd give her everything. It was a man who'd stand for something. And the moment he stopped standing, she stopped falling. At first, it feels intoxicating. The control, the influence, the quiet power of being the one who decides how the relationship moves, what he feels, what he fears. For the modern woman who's grown up being told, never depend on a man, being in control feels like winning. He listens. He adapts. He apologizes before she even finishes her sentence. She leads, and he follows. And for a while, that feels like love. It feels like safety. But it's not love she's feeling. It's leverage. And leverage isn't connection. It's survival dressed as affection. Because deep down, she doesn't want to dominate him. She wants to trust him. But how can you trust what you control? How can you admire what you manage? The truth is, when a woman has too much power in a relationship, she stops feeling feminine. Control hardens her. It keeps her safe, but it also keeps her guarded. And that armor that once made her feel secure slowly turns into a cage. She starts to miss the man she could lean on. The one who had opinions, boundaries, conviction. The one who could tell her no and mean it. The one who made her feel small, not in worth, but in wonder. Because a woman doesn't fall in love with comfort. She falls in love with certainty, with presence, with a man whose strength gives her permission to be soft. But a weak man robs her of that. He puts her in charge and then resents her for leading. He forces her to become the protector of the relationship, of his feelings, of his ego. And eventually, she grows tired. Because power without polarity is lonely. It looks strong on the outside, but it feels hollow on the inside. She doesn't say it, but she starts longing for something. A challenge, a spark, a man who doesn't flinch when she tests him. She wants someone she can't predict, someone who doesn't fold at her frustration, Someone who can calm her storm without losing his center. That's the paradox of modern power. The more she leads, the less she feels alive. And the more he submits, the less she respects him. So she leaves, not for a better man, but for a stronger one. Someone whose presence pulls her back into her softness. Someone who doesn't mistake peace for passivity. Because deep down, no matter how much she's told herself she wants equality, what she really craves is balance, a man strong enough to make her feel safe enough to let go. And until she finds that balance, her power will always feel like protection, never partnership. Something powerful happens when a man finally gets tired of being agreeable, when he stops trying to be loved and starts trying to be whole, when he realizes that being soft to avoid conflict isn't compassion, it's cowardice. That's the moment polarity begins to return. Because the world doesn't need more men who seek peace by surrendering their power. It needs men who can stand in their truth calmly, without aggression, without apology. Men who don't confuse being gentle with being weak, or being kind with being controlled. The modern man who rediscovers his center becomes magnetic again. Not because he's dominant, but because he's decisive. He knows what he stands for. He knows where he's going. And he knows that love isn't something to chase, it's something to lead. That's the difference between approval and attraction. Weak men beg for it. Strong men create it. He no longer performs for validation. He speaks less, but every word carries weight. He gives less, but every gesture has intention. He listens, not to please, but to understand. He's grounded, not as an act, but as a state of being. And women feel it immediately. Because when a man embodies masculine stillness, the feminine relaxes. She doesn't have to lead anymore. She doesn't have to control. Her walls start to fall. Her voice softens. Her energy returns. She finally feels what she's been chasing all along. Safety. Not the safety of control, but the safety of trust. Because real masculinity doesn't dominate the feminine. It anchors it. It doesn't silence her. It listens without losing itself. It doesn't compete with her strength. It invites her softness. This is the restoration of polarity. The moment balance replaces chaos, the moment respect replaces resentment, the moment love stops being a power struggle and becomes a shared mission again. He no longer needs her validation to feel like a man. And because of that, she can finally admire him as one. He's no longer afraid of her emotions. He can hold her storms without drowning in them. He can love her fully without losing himself. That's what the weak man never understood. A woman doesn't want to lead you. She wants to trust you. But trust can't exist without strength, and love can't exist without polarity. So when the man returns to his center, the world around him starts to realign. Peace no longer feels like passivity. Love no longer feels like risk, and respect no longer feels conditional. Because a man who knows who he is can finally give a woman what she's always wanted. Not control, but certainty.